Welcome to the 26th Metcalf Symposium at MUS. And from time to time, on Thursday, we have the guest speaker who speaks on Friday, speaks at an evening assembly, and you never really know who's going to come. But when you offer extra credit, the crowd is better. So thank you so much for seeking the extra credit. MUS, the seniors particularly in comparative religion are here, and their friends looking around, that's great, and some others who still may be joining us. This year, we feature someone who's consistent in our general desire to look at somebody in the big wide world, particularly in the States, who is an expert in their field. And their field is something that's consistent with what MUS tries to prepare you for in the great Western tradition of the ethical systems of art and literature and science and mathematics and all theology and all sorts of things that you find in your curriculum. We try to find an expert in their field to push you a little bit to where you're all trying to go. We're all in this game of getting you through high school and then get you through college and get you through graduate school so you'll go make the world a better place. Hopefully, come back here and help us in that process. So I was fortunate last year to, in my searching around, to think about, we were discussing transhumanism and artificial intelligence. And then right after that, Mr. Musk came to town with his investment, which has been a robust conversation that I've been able to have with people that helped me ultimately find Dr. Marks. He is a native of West Virginia, who's a graduate of the Rose-Hulman University, who then spent 20 years in Seattle at the University of Washington, 20 years now at Waco at Baylor University in computer science, and has done some fascinating modeling that's way beyond my expertise to understand, but I really enjoyed my conversation with him and reading what he's done with a group named the Discovery Institute, aligned with what he's done at Baylor University. And the discussion was in concert with our AI Club. And our AI Club, Patrick Berkey, president, everybody say hi to Patrick right here.
Hi, Patrick.
The AI Club earlier this year featured someone who is trying to be published out there in the discussion of artificial intelligence, and boy was it doom and gloom. It's all over. You only got a few years left, spend your money, the event horizon has happened, and it's too late. And it was a dark day. And so we got after that and said, well, hopefully we can turn that story around and see if there's a contrary opinion to that, and of course that will be Dr. Marks, who says, no, it's just the opposite. It's not going to be a dark day. There are incredible limits to artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I think that's something that we really wanted to discuss tonight, are the limits of artificial intelligence. So without further ado, welcome to Memphis, Dr. Robert Marks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been doing artificial intelligence for about 30 years, which is a lot longer than you were old, right? So yeah, I've been there in the genesis, seen all of the developments and things of that. And let me tell you, I think AI is incredible. I use it all the time. ChatGPT. Stay away from DeepSeek. I'm just afraid somebody might put something on my computer. But Grok is incredible. I think a lot better than images than ChatGPT. And I think it's going to make our lives a lot better. Every time you see an advancement of technology, you see that it makes our lives easier. Your great-grandparents were out plowing the fields, right? But because of technology, you're in here and can enjoy a good, fine lecture. So this is my talk. It's the limits of AI, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on. I think that the promises of AI are going to be incredible. It's going to be disruptive in terms of the impact that it has on our culture and our society. But let's talk about this a little bit. You mentioned Roman Yampowski. Yampowski, is that the way you say it, Patrick? Okay. Yeah, he is taking the what do they call it? The baton from people like Ray Kurzweil, who 20 years ago wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. What's the singularity? The singularity is when AI achieves the same performance as a human being. And when the singularity occurs, wow, that's just the start, because if AI has been able to develop to the point of the singularity of duplicating a human being, then it's going to continue to do that and become a super intelligence, right? And that's a little bit scary. People have done prophecies like Roman. Yuval Noah Harari is one. He wrote a book called Homo Deus. Homo Deus is the next step in evolution. We've had Homo erectus, we've had Homo sapien, you and me, and the next one is Homo Deus, which is a man god. And in it, he has a very dystopian view of things. Well, excuse me, Kurzweil wrote his book, The Singularity is Near, about 20 years ago. I don't believe the singularity is ever going to be achieved, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why as we go through this talk. And maybe Kurzweil thinks this too, because you know what he did last year, he wrote a book after 20 years and having not achieved the singularity, he wrote another book called The Singularity is Nearer. So we're getting better and better, we're getting closer to it. And maybe in 20 more years, we're going to hear a book called The Singularity is Almost Here. So this is the way it goes. But you hear so much hype today in terms of neural networks and artificial intelligence. Let me give you a very interesting piece of newspaper. This is the New York Times, and the headline is New Navy device learns by doing. Psychologist shows embryo of computer designed to read and grow wiser. It was published on July 7th by UPI, a notable news source. The Navy revealed the embryo of an electronic computer today that expects it will be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. Does this sound like the sort of headlines that you would hear? You know what? This was published, by the way, July 8th, 1958. This was 2 years after the word artificial intelligence had actually been coined by a group at Dartmouth that met, these really giant intellectual people, and coined the term artificial intelligence. So we see that way back in the 50s, artificial intelligence was hyped. It's being hyped today. And we see all sorts of fear happening. We see, for example, people like Bill Gates. He says, I don't understand why some people are not concerned about AI. He's very afraid of it. And Stephen Hawking, no dummy, said the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. This is very in line with Roman, right, Yampolsky. It could spell the end of the human race. It would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans who are limited by slow biological evolution couldn't compete and would be superseded. That's a little bit scary. So that's the hype that continues. This year, the Nobel Prize in Physics was won by a neural network researcher. I have no idea why neural network research, or how it has anything to do with physics. But nevertheless, he won the Nobel Prize. This is Jeff Hinton, who is kind of a character in his own. But he won the Nobel Prize, and he's no dummy. He said, I'm worried that the overall consequence of this might be systems more intelligent than us that eventually take control. So this is kind of the fear-mongering that we hear from people that believe that AI is going to take over. At the end of this talk, I'm going to tell you why they believe this. Would you like to know why they believe this? Okay, we'll talk about why. Well, on the other side is a guy that worked with Stephen Hawking, a guy named Roger Penrose. He wrote a book which was very influential to me. He wrote a book called The Emperor's New Mind. Now, Roger Penrose won the Nobel Prize in 2020 for his work in black holes. Now, who was his co-author in black holes? His co-author was Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking didn't win the Nobel Prize in 2020 because you got to be alive in order to get the Nobel Prize, and he wasn't alive, so Penrose got it himself. And he wrote a book which was very influential to me. If you're really into mathematics, get a copy of The Emperor's New Mind. But he goes through a lot of different mathematics that was fun for me. I struggled in some of the stuff, but it was very influential in what happened. So what I did is I took this and I thought the world needs to hear about Roger Penrose, another Nobel Prize winner. And so I wrote the book, Non-Computable You, What You Do That Artificial Intelligence Never Will, taking the ideas of Penrose and kind of distilling it hopefully to a more readable format. Now it turns out some of the material that I have in this book, since this was, I think, 2018, it's 2018 or something like that. Some of the work in this book is outdated, but the principles that I'm going to talk about today that are contained in the book still ring true. There are limitations about what AI can do, and we'll talk about them. In fact, I'm going to maintain in the course of this lecture that AI will never be creative. Now, you know, people talk about AI being creative, and AI being intelligent, and AI being conscious, but you know what? Nobody ever defines what creativity is. They don't define what consciousness is. They don't define the words that they say AI is going to achieve. We're going to do that. We're going to give a definition, and then we're going to attack, and we're going to discuss it from the viewpoint of the definition. AI will never understand what it does. Computers and AI can add the number 6 and 4. It has no idea what the number 6 is. It has no idea what the number 4 is. It doesn't understand what it's doing. We'll also make a case for that. It'll never be sentient in the sense of experiencing qualia. Now, if you're like me, you probably have never heard of the word qualia, but we'll define it. It's a type of sentience, and we'll make an argument that AI can never be sentient. It'll never achieve anything like the singularity, and we'll make a case for that, and it will always be hyped. Now, according to Roger Penrose, what is one of the reasons for this? And he goes in detail in his book on this, and one of the reasons is, believe it or not, algorithms. Algorithms? Okay, what does algorithms have to do with creativity and understanding? It turns out a lot. Most of you guys know what an algorithm is. An algorithm is a step-by-step procedure to do something. Like over here, we see an algorithm on the back of a shampoo bottle. It says wet hair, apply shampoo, lather, rinse, repeat. That's a step-by-step procedure that you want to follow. Now, if you are somebody that does computer code, you look at this and you see there's a flaw there. Anybody see the flaw? That's right. It'll never stop. You'll end up washing your hair forever because it doesn't say repeat once, it says repeat. And so it would begin to loop. And this is going to be important in our subsequent discussion. There are certain algorithms, certain computer programs that will loop forever and some will halt. And this one will run forever. If we substituted the last instruction with repeat once, then it would stop. It would be an algorithm that stopped. Another type of algorithm is a recipe. In fact, some people say that algorithms are nothing more than recipes. So when you bake a cake, you have the input, which is all your ingredients, and then you have a step-by-step procedure in order to bake the cake. Preheat your oven, mix things up, put it in the oven, preheat it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of another algorithm, a step-by-step procedure. I don't know how I ever live without Google Maps. But Google Maps gives you an algorithm on how to get from point A to point B. It gives you a step-by-step procedure to do that. So therefore, a lot of things that we're familiar with are contained in the idea of algorithms. Now here's what's interesting too. If you have a computer page, we have the Bradley Center for Natural and Artificial Intelligence. This is our website, mindmatters.ai, and we have a lot of very credentialed people writing columns about this, addressing the AI challenge and different aspects of AI. But if you go to any web page, you right-click and you say show source, it'll give you what's shown on the other side here. It'll give you this. You know what this is? This is the computer code that tells you what this page should do. So even computer pages are described by algorithms, step-by-step procedures to do something. Even in the training of AI, the most popular algorithm in AI, it's used everywhere, is something called error backpropagation, discovered in 1975 in a PhD thesis by a guy named Paul Werbos. And it is an incredibly mathematically beautiful algorithm on how to train neural networks. So if you use transformers, ChatGPT, if you use deepfakes, GANs, generative adversarial neural networks, they all use this backpropagation network because it has some wonderful properties, and again, it's mathematically beautiful. But you know what? This method of training the artificial intelligence is an algorithm. So even algorithms are used to train artificial intelligence. You don't have artificial intelligence doing otherwise. Now, nobody gets this. Anybody get this? This is a guy trying to achieve quantum tunneling. Anybody know what quantum tunneling is? What's quantum tunneling?
Isn't it where like there's molecules, you get past molecules.
Yes. Yeah, it turns out if you get down really, really small, you can actually put a molecule or a particle through a wall. There's a probability. But as you get larger and larger in scale and away from quantum scales, you can't do that anymore. So the joke is this guy's trying to quantum tunnel through this through this wall. But here's the bottom line for this. It turns out that in every field there are limitations in what you can do. So let's look at physics. There are brick walls you cannot go through. In physics, you cannot exceed the speed of light. Because according to relativity, the closer you get to the speed of light, the bigger your mass gets. And if you hit the speed of light, your mass becomes infinite. So, no, that ain't gonna happen. So that's a limitation in physics. Going back in time is not possible. You can kind of go forward in time, but once you're there, you can't come back. Perpetual motion machines, where you get more energy out than you put in. This is against the laws of thermodynamics. And if you try to patent a perpetual motion machine at the US Patent Office, they don't even look at it. They just reject it. They say, no, this is not possible. So these are brick walls in physics that cannot be breached. Mathematics, there are certain aspects that can't be breached. I don't know if you've ever played around in geometry with a straight edge and a compass. You cannot trisect an angle with a straight edge and a compass. You can't take an angle and divide it into three equal parts. It's just not possible. You can't square a circle. Anybody know what squaring a circle is? It means taking a square and making a circle with the same exact area. So you can't do that with straight edge and a compass. Then there's Gödel's theorem. That's an entire other lecture. This guy toppled mathematics in the 1930s by showing that there were things that mathematics could never do. Mathematics would never be able to encompass. He showed using mathematics that there were things that mathematics could never ever do. Really fascinating stuff. Now, if there are limitations in physics and mathematics, should not there be limitations in computer science? And the answer is yes. Number one, a limitation is that all computer programs are algorithmic. Every computer program ever written is a step-by-step procedure to do something. If you've written code, you know indeed this is the case. It's a step-by-step procedure to do something. And there are certain things which are non-algorithmic, and I want to address that next because this is really fascinating. Alan Turing, who's heard of Alan Turing? Everybody's heard of Alan Turing. Where did you hear somebody? Where did you hear from him? The imitation game, where he helped solve the Enigma problem with the Nazis in World War II. He was also the father of modern computer science. He generated something called the Turing machine, which is a type of computer that even today's supercomputers, anything you do on a computer today or in the future can be done on Turing's original machine. It might take 1,000,000 times as long, but nevertheless it can be done on Turing's original machine. And that's interesting. He was really a smart guy. He's known for the Enigma machine, but if you go into computer science, you'll know him as a founder of the area of computer science. Turing said there are problems which are non-algorithmic. There are problems which cannot be solved by a computer. And if you think about it, most of the things that we think about are algorithmic, right? It's probably hard to get your mind out of the algorithmic rut. But Turing showed that there were certain non-algorithmic problems. In a famous paper written in the 1930s, he questioned the existence of something called a Turing halting oracle. Do you remember the shampoo problem? It either stopped or repeated. So Turing asked the question, can I write a computer program to look at any program to say whether that program halted or ran forever? So in other words, this Turing halting problem would take an arbitrary program and it would input the computer program as an input into the halting problem, and the halting oracle would announce that this problem would either halt or run forever. Now, there's clearly cases where you have computer programs that'll halt, If you have stop as your very first line, or say, write hello world and then stop, that's going to stop, right? But we're talking about the ability to look at any arbitrary program. He proved, now this is not a matter of conjecture or hand waving, he proved mathematically that this was non-algorithmic, that this was a problem that could never be solved by a computer program. It was non-algorithmic. Since Turing, there's been some other things which have been shown to be non-algorithmic, and there's a bunch of them. I'll give you an example. Suppose that I asked you to write a computer program to generate pi up to, say, 1,000 digits, okay? You would write the program, and then I would write a program that did the same thing. One of our programs would be shorter than the other one, right? Because we're not going to write the same computer program. This leads to a very interesting observation that there should be a shortest program to generate pi to 1,000 digits. There should be a shortest program. Yet you can show that determining whether a program is the shortest program to do something is not algorithmic. You can never ever decide whether that program is what Chaitin calls an elite program, a program that is minimal length that performs a certain act, okay? So these are non-algorithmic things. These are provable in computer science. In fact, the shortest program is referred to as the Kolmogorov complexity, named after a Russian physicist, or mathematician. And there exists no computer program to detect the shortest program for all desired outcomes. Doing so is non-algorithmic. So this leads us to the question, are there things about you and me that are non-algorithmic? Are there things that we do that is non-algorithmic, that cannot be generated by a step-by-step procedure? And if that's true, then all of this idea of AI replacing us goes out the window, because AI is totally algorithmic. If we do non-algorithmic things, then AI and computer programs can never capture those non-algorithmic aspects. And I maintain that the following is true, and we're going to make the case for it as we go along here. I maintain that qualia is not algorithmic. Qualia is a type of sentience. I will make the argument that understanding is not algorithmic, that in order to understand, you have to go beyond the algorithmic. Creativity is also beyond the capability of a computer program, and we will define creativity before we actually show that it doesn't exist. And also, I don't think we'll have a lot of time, but I will deal with this tomorrow about consciousness. And again, you have to define what consciousness is. Now, the interesting idea here, an interesting consequent here is that you've heard about uploading yourself so you can achieve immortality, right? If you uploaded yourself and you have aspects of yourself which are non-algorithmic, that computer where you uploaded yourself could not grab that non-algorithmic aspect of you, could it? And you would end up being a very boring person, I think, if you had all the non-algorithmic things taken away from you. You'd be incredibly boring. You do have algorithmic aspects, but these are things which are non-algorithmic. Okay, let's take first of all the idea of qualia. Again, this is a word that I learned a couple of years ago. Qualia is the experience of a feeling. If you cut yourself, you have a feeling of pain, right? I have a lady here biting into a lemon. She is experiencing something. What is she experiencing? She's experiencing the taste of a lemon. You've all bitten into a lemon, right? And you could, so you have an experience. Now imagine trying to duplicate that experience in somebody who has been void of the sense of smell and taste since birth. You want to explain to them what you tasted. You could sit down with them and you could say, well, you know, lemons are yellow, and when I bite it, I go, like this. You could explain to them the chemistry of the acidic nature of lemons. You could talk about the Newtonian mechanics of biting. You could talk about the biology of taste buds. But no matter what you did, do you think you could ever duplicate in that person that experience that you had to bite into a lemon? No, it is something which is, I maintain, kind of obviously non-algorithmic. And so qualia in general is something which is non-algorithmic. So qualia is being a type of sentience, that implies that there is indeed no sentience. Because if you can't explain it to this person that is void of taste and smell since birth, how are you going to write a computer program to duplicate that? I mean, you can't explain it algorithmically with a discussion with this person. So how are you going to write a computer program to duplicate it? It's simply not possible. So that's something else which I maintain is non-algorithmic. What about understanding? This was nailed down by a philosopher named John Searle in a 1980 paper, now known as Searle's Chinese Room. Anybody read Chinese, by the way? No one? I was going to see if you could read what was on the slide. Okay, that's John 3:16. Okay, that's the Chinese John 3:16. Okay, Searle did the following. Now, why did he choose the Chinese room? Was he against Chinese? No, not really. But he chose it because he didn't speak Chinese, he didn't understand Chinese, he couldn't read Chinese, he knew nothing about Chinese at all. And Searle said, imagine myself being locked up in a room, and in this room is a bunch of file cabinets. Now, this tells you how old it is because he had file cabinets. You guys know what a file cabinet is? Okay, you do. Okay. Today we don't use file cabinets very much anymore, right? It's all stored in PDF files and things like that. But anyway, he's in this room full of file cabinets, and somebody comes through the door and he slips a little question through a slot in the door, and that question is written in Chinese. Well, Searle looks at it, he doesn't understand what it says, but he has all these file cabinets. And he starts going through the file cabinets and looking for a match, and he finally finds a match of that question. And in the slot in the drawer is the question, and right below it is the answer to the question. So Searle pulls that up, he writes down the answer to the question, refiles it, and slips it out the slot outside. You get what happened? Now, to somebody outside, it really looks what happened on the inside. It was a person that understood Chinese, that could read Chinese, that could actually answer questions in Chinese. That's what it would appear like on the outside. On the inside, the working of the computer, no, that wasn't it. What was he doing? He was following an algorithm, a step-by-step procedure. How did that information in the file cabinets get there? It got there by a human programmer. A human programmer put all of those questions and answers in there. Now, Searle's Chinese room, does that apply to today's like ChatGPT and things of that sort? Yes, absolutely. Clearly, today's problems are much more complicated than simple table lookup. But nevertheless, all of the ChatGPT and the large language models and the transformer stuff is all an algorithm. It's a big algorithm, and it's an enormous algorithm. So it's just like Searle's Chinese room. You slip the prompt through the door, it takes it, it enters it into this big, complex algorithm. The crank is turned, out spits the result, and that's slipped outside of the door. Inside, is there any understanding of what's happening? No, absolutely not. So therefore, I maintain by Searle's Chinese room that artificial intelligence cannot understand what it is doing. It is simply following an algorithm, a step-by-step procedure. Some of you might be old enough to remember when IBM Watson took on the world champions in Jeopardy. Anybody remember that? Okay. The older people in the back remember that. Yeah, well, Jeopardy, IBM Watson took on the world champions in Jeopardy, and it was their Watson computer, and it beat the world champions in Jeopardy. Why? Because it had this enormous Chinese room. It had all of Wikipedia, everything on the web, and that's where it could go to get the answers that were being asked. It had a big Chinese room. Did it understand the responses that it was giving? No, absolutely not. Okay, so that's sentience, that's understanding. What about creativity? Creativity is kind of a slippery word because you have to define what it means. And we're going to give it a definition. This definition comes from a professor named Selmer Bringjour. He's a cognitive scientist from Rensselaer Polytechnic. And he came up with something which I really think nails the idea of creativity. When will a computer be creative? A computer program will be creative if that program does something beyond the explanation or the intent of the programmer. It'll be creative if it does something beyond the intent or the explanation of the programmer. Now, you can have surprising results. I've coded and I get results that are surprising all the time. But usually I can look at the surprise and go back to the code and say, yeah, I kind of see why that happened. So indeed, this is the case of the definition of creativity and the so-called Lovelace test. This was named after Ada Lovelace, who was on the left. She was the first computer programmer, by the way, in the 19th century. She programmed Charles Babbage's mechanical computer in the 19th century and really pioneered the way for computer programmers. So think of that. She actually said, this was in the 19th century, computers can't create anything, for creation requires minimally originating something, but computers originate nothing. They merely do that which we order them via programs to do. The implication to the singularity here is enormous. Because if you write AI that writes better AI, that writes better AI, that assumes that that first AI is creative. It's doing something beyond the intent or explanation of the original programmer, right? And in order for you to have AI generating better AI, you have to have this degree of creativity. And as of today, there's been no computer program that has actually passed the Lovelace test. Every computer program, this includes transformer methods, GANs, whatever you like, nobody has really passed the Lovelace test at all. So computer programs are not creative in that sense. They do it'll be creative if it's beyond the explanation or the intent of the programmer. And in order for generating better AI, you have to do that. Let me give you a very interesting paper that just generated a few, I think it was last year. And this was by no dummies. This people were University of Cambridge, University of Oxford, Imperial College in London. These were really smart people. And they showed something called model collapse. And this addressed the question of whether AI can generate better AI. So let's do an experiment. This is not a proof that AI cannot generate better AI, but it's certainly evidence. What if you took ChatGPT or a large language model, DeepSeek or Grok or something, and then used that as a training for another large language model, and then used that as a training for another large language model, and you kept on doing that? Do you think it would get better or worse? Huh? It'd get better? It couldn't get better. In fact, that's what they found. They trained a large language model on architecture, and after they trained it, it did well. They asked it a question about something called perpendicular revival architecture. I have no idea what that means, but it gave, you can see in generation 0, this result. But then they used that large language model to train another one, to train another one, to train another one, and at the 9th generation, it says, in addition to being home to some of the world, same prompt, by the way. This is the response to the same prompt. In order, architecture, in addition to being home to some of the world's largest population of black-tailed jackrabbits, white-tailed jackrabbits, blue-tailed jackrabbits, red-tailed jackrabbits, yellow-tailed jackrabbits, etc., the AI became a blubbering idiot after a while. So it did get worse and worse and worse and worse. So you can't use a large language model to generate something. You can't use a large language model to generate better large language models. And that is evidence. So here's a fun one. You know, there's AI where if you give it a picture, it'll generate a description of the picture. And then if you give another AI a description of the picture, it'll generate the picture. What if you went back and forth between those? What do you think would happen? You get what? More and more distorted. So here's an example I lifted off the web. This is not my work, but I lifted it off the web, and it's fascinating. So they started with a picture of the Mona Lisa, and they said, okay, we're going to take a picture of the Mona Lisa, we're going to feed it to AI, get a description of the Mona Lisa, we're going to take that description, we're going to generate another picture, then we're going to take that picture and generate a description, back and forth and back and forth. You want to see what happens? It's really fascinating. So you can see, just like the I'll play it again because it's so fun to look at. I like when her eyes get boogie. What do you think? So it's just like the ChatGPT model. It doesn't get better. In fact, it gets worse. It degenerates. And the authors of this paper, in what they call model collapse, were able to mathematically demonstrate that AI had this problem of model collapse. Here's one of my favorite AI GANs. Anybody seen this before? This is Christ taking a selfie of him and his disciples. What do you think? I don't know, that makes me happy. I don't know. So there's no doubt that AI is doing incredible things with these transformer models which were used to generate this picture. One of the things I did is I asked AI to generate a limerick, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this. Write a limerick about Robert J. Marks giving a talk in Memphis to the MUS about the limits of AI. And it gave back this limerick, and it's actually pretty good. Robert J. Marks came to speak in Memphis, his knowledge unique. He told MUS with grace, AI has its place, but true thought, it's too far to reach. That's not bad, is it? And then I asked it to draw a picture. And I drew a picture, and I said, no, I got a beard. I got a long beard, long white beard. So it generated this picture. So this is supposedly me talking to you. Really, really incredible. So here's something which is interesting, is that okay, I got my slides mixed up here. I wrote a paper with Sam Haug and Bill Dembski on exponential contingency explosion. And this is really, really, I think, a very interesting paper, because it says that if the complexity of a system increases linearly, the ways it can respond goes up exponentially. So the more complicated a system, then the ways it can respond is exponentially high. So if you take something like a large language model, which has billions of movable parts in terms of complexity, maybe even trillions sometimes, there are lots of ways that can go wrong. There's lots of ways that it can go wrong. And the increase is just astonishing. Have you heard of the term hallucinations in terms of ChatGPT and such? I think that it's terrible. Hallucinations are, I think it's lame anthropomorphization. I can't even say that word. But it tries to make the AI seem human-like by performing a hallucination. And in fact, if you look at the source of hallucinations, AI is no more hallucinates than a spreadsheet's wrong answer caused by an incorrect entry. It responds the way it does because that's the way it was responded to train. So with this, there's lots of ways that AI can go kind of crazy. I'll give you one of them. You can't tell a large language model not to do something. And this is what the people at the large language model places are doing. They're taking these large language models and they fail so many ways that they're taking them and giving them to humans to put Band-Aids on all of these different cuts. And so this improvement in the AI is not due to AI, it's due to humans correcting all of the ways that it fails. And here's some of the ways that it fails today. You cannot tell a large language model not to do something. It doesn't understand the word not. It's like a little toddler. Let me give you an example. Draw a picture of Times Square at night. There are no pink dancing hippos either on the street or the billboards. You see the word no there? Okay, this is what it gave me. Whoops. I I got my slides all mixed up, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here's what it gave me finally. This is what it gave me. Again, draw a picture of Times Square at night. There are no pink dancing hippos either on the streets or the billboards. And this is what it gave me. Notice there's a pink hippo there, right? I said, no pink hippo, come on, come on. So I tried a little bit more. Now, do I think that this can this be fixed in these large language models and these transformer models? Yeah, I think it can. But this is another place where the people are going to have to come in and put Band-Aids on it in order to work. So there's so many ways that it can go wrong. Here's another one. Whoops. Draw a picture of a red Ferrari driven by a young lady with no teeth. I wanted a woman bald-headed in the mouth. The windows are down doing a wheelie. The lady has no teeth. No teeth. There are no elephants in the picture. No elephants. Again, the transformer model did not understand the word no, and this is what I got. Not only does the lady have teeth, the car has teeth, and it's followed by 4 elephants. So right now, it doesn't understand no. Can this be fixed? And yeah, it'll be fixed by humans putting Band-Aids on it, and they're going to be putting Band-Aids on this for a long, long time, because there's so many degrees of freedom that's available in these large language models. This is a reason that ChatGPT and these other large language models say, don't trust what we're saying, right? It's because they can't be sure what they're doing. They're going to be putting Band-Aids on this for a long, long time, I believe. This is a reason it's not okay to trust this, but if you look at AI with less complexity, like self-driving cars, in San Francisco now, these Waymo cars, driverless taxi cabs are all over the place. And yeah, I would trust that. I would trust that because the degrees of freedom and the complexity of the system compared to this is not that big. So it's something which can be tested. Okay, let's see if I can get this in right here. I love this. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but all of the advances in artificial intelligence have been made by human beings. 2013, Goodfellow came up with the idea of a generative adversarial neural network called a GAN. And this is used for deep fakes. And we're seeing deep fakes now. There was recently a deep fake voice that came out about Donald Trump Jr. saying some stuff. Really kind of interesting. So there's this great website, and it's about a decade old, and the website is thispersondoesnotexist.com. And you click on it, and you get all these pictures of people that do not exist. Now, 4 of these people are real, 4 of them are fake. Can you tell me which ones are fake? Okay, which one? This one? That one? That's fake?
I just know why he should stay really last.
The one with the glasses. This guy? Okay, this guy is the dean of the College of Engineering at Baylor University, so he's real. It didn't work out. Yeah, no, he's real. But these are astonishing in terms of the reality of them. What's that? The second to right, this lady up here. Okay, does she have a nose ring or something? Yeah, it looks like her philtrum. Here's a word that you should learn. You know what this is called? It's called your philtrum. Okay, her philtrum is misaligned. So maybe that's what's happening. Okay, are you ready? The 4 on the left are fake. The 4 on the right are real. And it's frankly kind of astonishing, isn't it? Now, we mentioned that with these large language models with lots of degrees of freedom, there's lots of ways it can go wrong. And if you keep on clicking on this person does not exist, you get some weird things after all. You'll get something like this. And you look at this, and that girl looks real, but there's this big fleshy thing on the left here, okay? So that's something which I think people would call an hallucination. No, it's a flaw in the program. That's the way it was programmed to do. Do I think that the people that wrote this person does not exist can fix that? Yeah, they probably can, but it's going to take a human to do it. Okay, let's talk about creativity from different claims. Have you ever heard the claim that AI can write music? Have you heard music generated by AI? It's not bad, is it? But what do you do? So let's go through the following scenario. I want to generate AI, and I want it to write music that relates to the Baroque period. What would I do? I would gather all of the works of Bach. I would gather the works of Handel. I would use that to train the neural network. Guess what the neural network would spit out? Something that sounds like Bach and Handel. In other words, AI can only interpolate with inside the box. It cannot interpolate, it cannot extrapolate outside of the box. It will never generate jazz. It'll never generate music by Wagner, never generate the blues, and it will never generate rap. It does what is inside of the box. Can AI create prose? It does a pretty good job, right? You ask it to write a paragraph on the discovery of America, and it'll do that. However, there's a difference between what AI does and what humans do. AI uses the syntax. If you look at the transformer model, as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, it only relies on the syntax of the statistical relationship of the words. Again, it has no understanding of what these words are, and human beings, on the other hand, rely on semantics, which is the meaning of the words. Noam Chomsky, I think this is a great saying. He said, GPT is high-tech plagiarism. And this is kind of interesting because it turns out that behind the scenes, if you follow this sort of stuff, there's all sorts of litigation going on about AI, these large language models, using text, which is inappropriate. For example, the New York Times has filed a lawsuit against ChatGPT saying that they used content that fell behind the New York Times paywall. And so they were plagiarizing it, they were taking it. Getty images, if you've seen Getty images below pictures, right? This is a Getty image. If you use a Getty image, be prepared to pay Getty either voluntarily or in the courtroom. They're very litigious. And Getty Images has taken legal action against Stability AI for employing more than 12 million of its copyrighted images in the training of a AI image generator. So these lawsuits are still pending. And depending on the outcome is going to be the future of generative AI. I suspect that the common sense solution to this is that these companies are going to have to pay the New York Times and Getty Images money in order to use their material to train the neural networks. Well, if they are charging money to do that, that's going to be passed on to us, right? So we're living in a beautiful period right now where all of this AI is free, but if this comes out another way, that isn't going to work. So here's some interesting things. This is an old AI picture, as you can tell, but this is one of the images used by Getty Images. This was generated by Stability AI. And can you see a little hint here that it was copied from Getty Images? Yeah, the Getty Image logo kind of came out, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of a smoking gun. But even more definitive are things of the following. Draw a picture of the Joker from the movie, and then compare that to a copyrighted image of the Joker from Warner Brothers. Is that a violation of copyright? Yeah, I suspect it is. What about Iron Man? Here's a AI-generated Iron Man. This is the copyrighted image from Marvel. Yeah, it's kind of spot on. And this is one of my favorite. Ask Bing for an Italian video game character. No mention of the Mario Brothers. What do you think it does? Yeah, it gives the Mario Brothers, right? So this is the output. This is the output of Bing for an Italian generated movie. Okay. So Clay mentioned transhumanism, so I want to talk a bit about transhumanism and some of the philosophy behind that. We've talked about AI, and we've talked about all of these people like Stephen Hawking, Roman Yablonsky, and Yuval Harari, in terms of their belief in this dystopian future where AI takes over. I hope I have dispelled in you with the idea that AI can ever reach the singularity or even beyond the singularity, because AI has the inability of being creative. So let's talk about transhumanism a little bit. You know why it's transhumanism? You know why they believe this? It's because they have materialism as a religion. Now, Baylor is a Christian university. I'm a Christian myself. I've been a follower of Christ since I was about your age, about a junior in, I was a junior in college, actually. And so I'm going to present this from a Christian point of view as to why this transhumanism is here. There was a great philosopher named Pascal. How many have heard of Pascal? Everybody's heard of Pascal. How do you know him? From science or? But Pascal's wager? Do you know Pascal? This is interesting. He was a scientist. You know, the MKS unit for pressure is named after Pascal. He was the co-discoverer of the modern theory of probability with Fermat in an exchange of letters. He invented the first computer, something called the Pascaline. And there was a computer language named after him.
I took it.
What's that?
I took it in high school.
You took Pascal?
I did.
Okay.
Sorry, Kathy's nothing.
Okay, so you've heard of Pascal. Well, Pascal had an interesting life. He lived up to a certain point, then they had what the historians call a night of fire. Look it up because it's fascinating. And it was discovered in his funeral, where they found sewn in the lining of his coat notes that he took on the night he converted to Christianity. And it was a night of fire, and it's just revolutionary. The Baptists would say that on that night he was born again. So up to that time, he spent his time in science and technology. From then on, he spent his time in Christian apologetics, including Pascal's wager. So if you study Pascal, you can study Pascal in the sciences, or you can go over to Truett Seminary at Baylor and study him as a philosopher after the Night of Fire. And he did all of this, just incredible. You know how old he was when he died? 39. He died when he was 39. He did all of this before 39. Okay, so I want to talk now about the idea of an AI church. There is a faith in artificial intelligence. One of the things they try to do is achieve immortality. We've talked about this, uploading yourself so you can live forever. It turns out that Pascal's, I didn't read the thing. Pascal said that there is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God. Now, Pascal was a Christian, and he says, but only by God, the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ. So let's accept the idea that there is a God-shaped vacuum inside of every one of us. That's the reason you have Hindus. It's the reason you have Muslims. It's the reason you have the different religions. You have a God-shaped vacuum, and you've got to try to fill that God-shaped vacuum. And every person has it. And the people who are materialists have this, and they have founded an AI church. Again, they try to achieve immortality by uploading themselves. Those of us that are Christians know about immortality and the relationship of our relationship to Christ and obtaining immortality. They also talk about superintelligence, this idea that AI is going to exceed the singularity and become a superintelligence. Those of us that are Christians have known by a superintelligence for a long, long time. They have a Bible. I would say that their Bible is probably Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity. They have a prophet, and I would call that probably Yuval Harari. What'd I do? I hit the wrong thing, excuse me. Okay, yeah, I would say that Yuval Harari is that. Now, you think, well, this is just a generalization you're looking at. No, it isn't. There is actually a guy in California named Anthony Lewandowski, and he founded an AI church called Way of the Future. This is serious. And what's the first thing you do when you find a church? You apply to the IRS for tax exemption. And so what he did is he wrote the IRS this epistle about his church. It's kind of the Apostles' Creed for the AI Church. The AI Church believes in the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computer hardware and software. Is that a little bit scary to you? It's a little bit weird, isn't it? In fact, Ray Kurzweil, who wrote The Singularity is Near, was once asked, do you believe in God? You know what his response was? He said, not yet. He believes that it's coming on, just like this Homo Deus sort of thing. Unfortunately, the Anthony Lewandowski, by the way, Anthony Lewandowski, he was in Silicon Valley. He worked for Waymo. Waymo has all these cars running in San Francisco now, Waymo self-driving cars. He was recruited by Uber, and so he went to Uber's self-driving car place, and he did something interesting there because the AI Church did not have the 10 Commandments, especially thou shalt not steal. So he took a bunch of trade secrets with him. And he was charged with stealing trade secrets. He was put on trial, and the judge in charge of this said, this was not a small crime, this was the biggest trade secrets crime I have ever seen. Lewandowski was fined $750,000, and then he was sued by Google Google, who owned Waymo, for $179 million in a civil case. So, yeah, if you find a church based on AI, make sure you have a 10 Commandments. Now, we know in Christianity that forgiveness comes from Christ. In the AI church, forgiveness was given by a presidential pardon. He was given a presidential pardon and now is outside of jail. Probably motivated a lot by the tech biggies such as Peter Thiel and maybe Elon Musk. I've heard Peter Thiel's name mentioned, but Elon Musk is the other one. So you think, well, that's gone away. Well, no, there isn't. If you go to the church, if you go to the web today and you put AI church, you will actually come up with a church that worships AI. And so can you see that this is the materialist trying to fill this God-shaped vacuum which is inside them? And this is the motivation behind the people like Ray Kurzweil and Noah Harari and Roman, I believe, also, is that they're trying to fill this God-shaped vacuum by this materialism. So isn't that interesting? The answer is yes. So people always ask me, what about the future? What's going to happen in the future? There was a great quantum mechanic physicist that said forecasting is very dangerous, especially if it's about the future. So you got to be very careful about forecasting. So, but here's my forecast. And first of all, let me answer some questions which are normally asked. What about the future? We're going to have more and more powerful computers, right? Won't these limitations of computers that someday, as we get higher and higher and more complicated computers, won't they be overcome? No, there's something called the Church-Turing thesis, Alan Turing, and his PhD advisor, Alonzo Church. They came up with something called the Church-Turing thesis, which basically said that today's computers, super-duper computers, can be performed, anything you can do on a computer can be performed by the Turing machine, or Turing's original machine. And the computers of the future will be the same. And if you think about it, this is a little wild. Anything a computer can do today, if you had 1,000,000 years, you could probably work it out with paper and pencil, couldn't you? Could you? Yeah, because what? You're following an algorithm, but that algorithm has been accelerated by computer code. And so that's interesting. So the computers of the future will not have that capability. What about quantum computers? There's a big announcement by Microsoft. Okay, don't get me started on Microsoft. But there's a big, it was a discussion that they had discovered a fourth state of matter. Well, the person that wrote that doesn't understand matter because there already is a fourth state of matter, which is called plasma. Right, so actually they discovered a fifth state of matter, which they called a topological state. I have no idea what that means. But what about quantum computers of the future? Well, I have a friend at Baylor that teaches a graduate course in quantum computers. And if you are given a course in quantum computers, the first thing you're taught is Shor's algorithm and, there's another algorithm. Anybody know what it is? Shor's algorithm and, I forget. But they're algorithms. Shor's algorithm. You're taught algorithms. These quantum computers do algorithms just like a regular computer can do. And they can do it a heck of a lot faster just like a super duper computer of the future, but they are still limited by this algorithmic aspect. So what's the future going to be? Well, it turns out that we are now enamored by all of the technology. And I'm old enough to remember by being blown away as new technology comes along the pike. And I'm sure a lot of you have too. I saw Uber come along and you know what my first reaction was to Uber was? Why didn't I think of that? That is such a cool idea, right? Why didn't I think of that? But there's other things. Google Maps, it still blows my mind. But when it first came out, it was incredible. I remember the first time I went to downtown Seattle with a friend that worked for a cell phone company, and he handed me a cell phone, and I was able to, in the car, call my mother in Cleveland. Holy Toledo, that was incredible. So what happens is new technology comes along, and we are enamored by it. We are just blown away by it. And we go through something called a hype curve, where the hype goes up, you realize the limitations, it goes down into the depths of cynicism, and then finally meets something called the asymptote of reality, where it's used every day. Okay, today I'm not surprised by cell phones. And in 10 years, we're not going to be surprised by AI. All of the advances in AI are done by human beings. The latest episode was 2017 and the publication of Transformers, which ushered in the idea of large language models and all of these other things. And up to then, we've been patch. And until we have another breakthrough, through ingenuity of a human being into a different algorithm for AI, we're just going to be doing patch. But I think in 20 years, it's just going to be part of it. The smoke's out of the bottle. And we're going to see the use of AI. I'm seeing it right now in the use of in terms of creative writing classes, in industrial design, in art, and it's being used quite a bit. And it's being used in a very ethical way in order to perform these operations. So it's going to be a part of things in the future. So that's my forecast. So in 20 years, you're going to say, oh, remember when we were so excited about AI? Now we understand its limitation. It's been applied here. It hasn't worked here, and here. But yep, we have it. So wrapping up, AI will never experience qualia. Remember biting into the lemon? It'll never be sentient. It'll never understand what it's doing. It'll never experience emotion. It will never be creative. And as this, I think, is summed up very nice in Psalm 139. It says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, maybe beyond the comprehension. There are things in mathematics. Oh, this isn't, okay, I don't want to go down that line, but yeah, I will. There are things in mathematics which you can prove exist, but then you can prove that are unknowable. Do you believe that? And so there might be things which are unknowable and non-believable. Okay, so I wanted to hype my book again about Non-Computable You. It's available in book, Kindle, and audio. And then tomorrow I'm going to be talking about minding the brain. And tomorrow's lecture is going to be, is your mind greater than your brain? There is an assumption in all of this AI that we are computers made out of meat. We are more than computers made out of meat. And this was a collection of really some of the top thinkers in the world that contributed towards this idea that we are more than computers made out of meat. So with that, I ran a little bit over. Sorry, that's the way I go. So you have to watch my final slide because I spent a lot of time on it. Okay, thank you for your attention.